जय श्री राधे। श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय। Jai Shri Krishna. The 80th day of our readings, Varta 74, the story of Gopal Das Jatadhari, a Gauda Brahmin from Prayag, Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, Gopal Das is a Sakhi of Sri Lalitaji named Rasabhadra. He appeared as a Gauda Brahmin in Prayag. When he was 6, a lot of Naga Vairagi sadhus, naked renunciates, came to Varanasi. They stayed there for some time and went to Prayag to bathe on the Makara Sankranti day. In the crowd, Gopal Das became separated from his father. He began to cry. One of the sadhus said he would take him to find his father, but instead he went back to his tent, collected his stuff, and ran away with the boy. He went to the south of the country and treated Gopal Das like his disciple. After that, Gopal Das began to live with that sadhu's group, and in this way reached the age of 30. When that sadhu died, Gopal Das decided to go on pilgrimage. He went with about 50 sadhus to Dwarka and then on to Mathura. At that time, Sri Acharyaji was on Vishram Ghat performing his evening prayers. Gopal Das caught sight of Sri Acharyaji and went to stand next to him. Krishnadas Megan asked him why he was standing there. The sadhus you were with have gone. Gopal Das said, I have been with the wrong company for my whole life. Now I need Sri Acharyaji's grace. Then only when I will be able to enjoy the company of great Vaishnavas and the Lord. When Sri Acharyaji finished his prayers, he called Gopal Das by name. You have come, he said. Gopal Das replied that, O Maharaj, it is purely through your grace alone that I have come. I have been wandering around too much. Keeping bad company on endless paths, I have become full of sinful behaviour. I will be able to swim over the ocean of the material world by your grace alone. I have no strength to do this by myself. Please accept me as your disciple. Sri Acharyaji told him to shave off his long locks, bathe, and then return to him for initiation. Gopal Das had his hair cut off, bathed first in a well and then in Sri Yamunaji, and came back to Sri Acharyaji, who then initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandh. Gopal Das requested Sri Acharyaji to tell him how to serve. Sri Acharyaji invited him to go to Govardhan with him. There you can serve in Sri Govardhan Naji's garden, he said. When they arrived there, Gopal Das had the sight of Sri Govardhan Naji and then began to serve in his garden. Gopal Das kept his careful eye on every single fruit and flower and cherished every tree. He removed all the wild grass from the garden and he kept all the trees and plants green with watering. He always thought that Sri Thakurji might come there to play, and so the place should be as beautiful as possible. He had been serving like this for quite a while when it came to his notice that one Vaishnava's son daily took 5 to 10 flowers without asking. At first Gopal Das did not know who was taking the flowers, and he tried many ways to find out, but could not. So one day Gopal Das hid in the garden. Then that 11-year-old son of a Vaishnava came there. He looked everywhere to see if Gopal Das was around, and deciding that he was not, took 5 flowers. Gopal Das came running up and beat the boy. The boy escaped and ran away. In anger, Gopal Das ran after him. The boy managed to get away and hid in Srinathji's temple. He saw that the doors for making the offerings were opened, so he went inside and hid right next to Srinathji. Gopal Das was angry, so he didn't notice that he was in the temple, and he slapped the boy in front of Srinathji. The temple servants came there and took the boy out of Gopal Das's grip. Srinathji did not like this at all. He said, O Gopal Das, you did not show me any respect and you have beaten this boy in my personal space. After that, you even seem to have forgotten that you did that. I know that the boy was thus punished, so the instruction would be known that anyone else should not take the Lord's flowers, or indeed anything else, for one's own Sri Thakurji at home. Then Sri Acharyaji gave Gopal Das his service in the pan room. Gopal Das service in the pan room, where the fragrant pan leaves were prepared for Srinathji. He did this seva very carefully. One time in the rainy season, some particularly hot and humid weather came. Gopal Das spread out all the leaves in a basket, covered them with a wet cloth, and fanned them all night long. Sri Acharyaji had the habit of getting up in the night 2 or 3 times and checking what all his dear servants were doing. This made sure that none of them were engaged in worldly chit-chat or criticism. One day in the middle of the night, Sri Acharyaji was thus observing. He saw from afar one was singing kirtan, one was singing dole, folk songs, and one was reading from the Ras Panchadhyay. One was discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. He was pleased to witness all of this. No one was chit-chatting or casting criticism. When he came to Gopal Das, he could see that his head was falling forward as sleep overtook him, but he was at the same time fanning the pan leaves. Sri Acharyaji was extra pleased with him. He is falling asleep, but still serving the Lord. Part 1. Sri Acharyaji invited Gopal Das to come to Srinathji's temple after bathing in the morning and there to fan Srinathji. Bhav Prakash. At that time, the fans operated by ropes were not yet set up. The next morning, Gopal Das entered Srinathji's temple after bathing and started to fan him. He was so lost in the love for the Lord that he didn't stop even with Sri Acharyaji's permission when the Lord was taking rest. Sri Acharyaji told him to keep his eyes closed when he was fanning at this time. Thereafter he fanned with his eyes closed in the night time. Gopal Das was such an accomplished devotee. His body did not interrupt his service even to pass water. One night, Srinathji spoke directly to him and told him to open his eyes and look at him. Gopal Das said, "O Maharaj, Sri Acharyaji has commanded me to do this service with my eyes closed, so I must not open them." Srinathji fed Gopal Das with Mahaprasad with his own hands, but he still did not open his eyes. This is how exactly he followed Sri Acharyaji's instructions. He did not open his eyes, even though Srinathji told him to. But there was so much grace upon him that when Sri Swamiji came there and talked with Sri Govardhan, then Gopal Das heard their conversations. Part 2. One day Srinathji remembered that this was the same boy, the same Gopal Das who had slapped the boy who had taken the flowers in front of him. This was an offence, and so he needed to be punished and purified. Thereby, thought Srinathji, I will make him suffer separation from me. He decided. He made Gopal Das's mind change, and he decided to go on a long pilgrimage with the intention of returning. Sri Gosaiji has written, "May my actions, inspired in my intelligence by the Lord himself, be pleasing to his lotus feet." Buddhi praraka Krishnasya pada padmam prasidatu. The embodied soul is always driven to do whatever the Lord decides for them. Part 2 continued. Gopal Das went to Sri Acharyaji and supplicated, "O Maharaj, I would really like to go on a long pilgrimage." Sri Acharyaji told him that was all right. Gopal Das bowed to Sri Acharyaji and got up to set off. All the other Vaishnavas were very surprised that a Vaishnava to whom Srinathji spoke directly and even fed with his own hand would change his mind like this. They could not understand, so one Vaishnava asked Sri Acharyaji why he had suddenly begun to think like this. Sri Acharyaji explained that he had committed a serious offence in that he had beaten that Vaishnav's son in front of Srinathji because he had stolen some flowers. This was, he explained, the punishment for that travesty. But he will not be able to go far. He will feel so much separation that he will actually leave his body and proceed to the Leela. His offence would not be an obstacle in his destiny, he clarified. Bhav Prakash, one can go directly to the Lord when they have suffered the good and bad effects of their actions here. Part 2 continued. The Vaishnavas then understood. When Gopal Das had travelled to the second camp, he began to remember the bliss of Srinathji's form. He fell down in the agony of separation. Oh no, I am the worst sinner. I have left the bliss of Srinathji's Seva and the company of such enlightened Vaishnavas in order to go on this pilgrimage. Why, he cried. Useless and stupid are my body, mind and heart that I even thought of doing this. He fainted and remembering Srinathji's form, quit his body and entered the Lord's Leela. Bhav Prakash. This tale tells us not to offend anyone ever. Such offences become obstacles in one's path to the Lord. The path gets interrupted. One should always be afraid of hurting anyone else. Sri Acharyaji has taught us to have unshakable faith. For example, Srinathji told Gopal Das to open his eyes, but he didn't because Sri Acharyaji had not given his permission. Srinathji was pleased by this. Suffering separation for the Lord is the best solution for getting rid of the effects of offences. Separation leads to attainment of the Lord, and such is the rule taught here. Just to repeat the Bhav Prakash, one can go directly to the Lord when they have suffered the good and bad effects of their actions here. Suffering separation for the Lord is the best solution for getting rid of the effects of offences. Separation leads to attainment of the Lord. Such is the rule taught here. Thus concludes Varta 74, the story of Gopal Das Chatadari, a gold Brahmin from Prayag, an accomplished Vaishnava and recipient of great grace from Sri Acharyaji. although in reality there is no end to this tale.